So, Evan, welcome to our second podcast where I need you as a prop because I can't talk to myself even though I could. And I need somebody to talk to. I know you had this part, so I thought maybe I could do
Great
it.
intro.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, maybe I can create an introduction that doesn't make you nervous and that sets a happy tone.
So exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what are the strategies for making money in real estate? What things can you do to make money in real estate, Pablo?
Legally.
Legally, yeah, of
Yeah.
course, always.
Yeah, legally to make money. So first of all, for anybody that's watching, this is not wine. This is coffee and water.
And this is water.
Yeah, we'll leave the wine till the end of the day. So there are only two strategies: long-term strategies and short-term strategies. And those are defined by your own parameters of appetite for risk. Anything that you want to see into real estate, any opportunity you're offered, given, or thinking about, the first question that you have to ask yourself is, am I looking at a short-term strategy or a long-term strategy? Everything else is minuscule. You have to be very clear on how you're trying to make your money.
And there are obviously pros and cons to having short-term and long-term strategy. For example, tax reasons, or you want to leverage risk to make more money on the short term.
Correct. So I really like this question because we all watch on Instagram, and the internet, any other podcast. There's so much confusion going on. Everybody wants to do real estate because that's how everybody got rich in the past, and Donald Trump made it awesome, and the Rockefellers, and it doesn't matter. Like whoever it is that you're thinking about, if they have wealth, they have a lot of real estate, and they either created their wealth through real estate or after having a lot of wealth, now they're invested into real estate. So most people will get confused on, well, I got to do this, but what about this other? First, you need to determine what is your appetite for risk. Are you trying to get rich within the next 3 to 5 years? Are you trying to get rich within the next 20 years? And this is the same when you hear people, oh, put $30 a day into the IRA savings account or the 401k or the whatever it is. Then in 30 years, you'll have $1 million. Dude, well, yeah, that's fine. If that is what you can do, what you can fathom in risk, what you can take out of your pocket, fine. But there are many strategies on how to create wealth in the short term using real estate.
That you actually make up an excellent point that when it comes to real estate, it really matters what strategies you want to do depending on your goals. Your goals are one of the big definer factors
Correct.
on what strategy you should be doing.
Correct.
And also what type of risks that you want to play into your goals. Like how much are you willing to risk to accomplish these goals?
That's correct. And how long will you take that risk for? The main thing that you hear people talking about is this fallacy or this myth or this unicorn of the passive income. Well, you don't achieve. So everybody was, oh, I'm going to do this. And in a very short period of time, I will achieve passive income. I'm not saying it can't be done because the world is large and there's many properties and there's many transactions. But in general, you achieve, and again, this is a fallacy, but this so-called passive income after many years of investment and many properties having been acquired. In a way, it doesn't matter how you slice it or dice it, in a way that the amount of equity you have is more than the amount of debt, not in value of the property, but in debt as a cash payment on a month-to-month basis for the property. Does that make sense? So it doesn't matter how much debt you have. What matters is, okay, this debt that was acquired in this year at this X rate creates this cash expense for that mortgage or for the hard money lender, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And with that specific rent, I can cover it and more. So that means that you have to have created equity within your property. How do you create equity? Well, there's only two ways in real estate. You either bought something that was crap, and I don't care if it's empty land and you put a building, or a bad house and you remodel it. And in the remodel process, or in building it yourself, you created the additional equity that would have been acquired by the contractor. So if the contractor was going to make 30% in his construction cost by building this, then you've now acquired that additional 30%. Or if the property unzoned, let's say unzoned, the property value is $50,000, but once it has a building, the land itself has an intrinsic value of 100, because now you added utilities, you added this, you added that, plus the improvements, which is technically the building. Well, now you've acquired X much value. The more you build, the more you renovate, the more dilapidated property you started with, dilapidated with a D, not a T, internal joke. So the more dilapidated that it is, then the more you create value on your property. And then the other part you create value is by making sure that your debt service obviously has to be significantly less than whatever you're receiving. And it doesn't matter how you're receiving it. If it's on a year-to-year contract, if you're doing it as an Airbnb, period. Right. So all this talk about BRRRR, which is the, what do you call it? Buy, rehab, rent, rents, or refinance, repeat. Right. Or fix and flips to hold, or this unicorn of the multifamily that everybody talks about. Doesn't matter. It's all the same strategy. It's long term, and you're trying to create this value that will make
the rental income
higher
than
your
the
debt.
cost of running
Correct.
the property, the debt.
Correct.
Things of that nature.
But if that is the case, let's think one step further. Let's say it costs you $100,000 of down payment for whatever property. And then the additional cash that you get for the property after mortgage is, I don't know, let's say let's put real numbers. A property, you got it for $200,000, you put 50% down payment, 50% goes in a mortgage, and then you're paying, I don't know, $500 a month, and then you get $1,000. Well, now the question you have to ask yourself is this $100,000 that is making me a profit of $500? Again, you're getting rent $1,000, but you get $500, you get $500. Is this amount enough on my internal rate of return once you process your numbers to merit for me having this property?
Also, keep in mind, we are excluding expenses and management fees and fixing and repairing and stuff like that for this example. Just maintaining.
Right. Well, no, but on any example, what I'm trying to say is, let's say you're looking at yourself 20 years from now, okay? And now you hold whatever number of properties. And this is important to note. Is this money that you have invested on all this equity, if you were to put it into anything else, would you get the same return that you get from after expenses, after mortgage and expenses? So this profit that you're making, is it commensurable to the amount of money you have invested? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it may be that once you do, it's like, yeah, I'm getting a 7% return, 10% return.
Sure.
So I have $1 million of equity into many properties, or $10 million into many properties, and I get a 7% return, and I'm happy with that because it's very low risk. I own buildings and I have insurance, and if they burn, I build new. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
So is that enough for this stage of your life? And that's the other part that most people that are getting into real estate confused, because they want this passive income without understanding that passive income might have a very low return. We have a problem.
We do have a problem. Why is it leaking?
Did you keep? Are we still taping?
Yeah.
So thank you. We need more. Well,
It's still leaking here.
oh yeah, it will. There's no stopping it. It's not. Anyway, so I know we're still taping. So for everybody that's at home, this is what's happening in the live. we have a small problem.
This is totally gonna ruin our audio now. Completely.
Really?
I mean, you're gonna hear that in the background.
Well, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, we'll just keep going.
We have to keep going.
The show must go on.
So, because the main shower got stuck and it started filling with water, it started seeping in the sides, and we have that problem. Anyway.
So this is why you don't want rentals?
Yeah, maybe. Lol. I don't know what to tell you. It's not going to stop until some time from now.
All right.
Well, talking about rentals.
Yeah.
If you have insurance, there's no problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the downside of having rentals and having rental properties, is that you're constantly running into problems.
But more importantly, once you get into this passive income stage, people forget that in the end, you are still looking for a return on your equity. So you take whatever it is, the value of all the properties you have, how much equity you have in, subtract the debt, just the equity. So, and for everybody that doesn't understand it, any property, you have an equity portion and a debt portion, and that should be equal to or less than your appraised value. Whatever it is, the true appraised value, not whatever you think it's worth, but an appraised value. So if this equity is giving you a return profit after all expenses, including mortgage and expenses, cost, administrative fee, and plumbing, whatever that profit is giving you a year, that is your return. And if it is very small, then you may not, you may consider talking to an expert. Like, hey, my portfolio is not giving me enough money. My return is very small. Am I doing everything right? Well, probably not. So there is no such thing as a complete passive income. You always have to be checking, are my rents there? Is my property in a bad condition and therefore I can't have enough? So it's always this cat and mouse game. You're trying to get the most bang for the buck. But let's say you have a 5% return. It's so low that maybe you want to just sell everything and buy something else, buy a different asset. That's the point.
Yeah, and also, I mean, for example, there are ways of, for example, if you had very low equity in a property, in a rental property, you could get higher returns on your equity. And you can just play around with those numbers. But I guess the point that you're trying to make is that it doesn't matter if you have 100 units, a million units in rental properties. At some point, you will have to co-visit those units. You will have to oversee it. It is an active investment.
Correct.
It doesn't matter if you have people in management. It doesn't matter if you have people overlooking the property. This is not, the passive income is somewhat a myth.
Correct. Well, and I'll even give you a new tidbit that I naturally know because I've done it for so many years, 99 years. But a lot of people are not aware. Let's say that equity to profit ratio, it's huge, it's 20%. Okay, but for argument's sake, chances are, I mean, I don't care how you got there, but you got $1 million in equity, and that brings you 200,000 in profit. Wow! Congratulations. Good. Chances are you could sell it to somebody else for full value, as long as you allow them to keep 10% returns. And then that's a way to extract the value. And then with that value, you buy other real estate. And that person that was going to take the $1 million with 10% return will probably eventually sell it to someone else as a part of a bigger portfolio. All of this always ends up with a big fund owning it at a very low return, because a bigger fund has the opportunity of putting many houses or properties like yours in a large portfolio, and because they have 100, I'm probably putting my hand right on top of your face, $100 million in properties, $1 billion in property, doesn't matter the number, but by having such a large portfolio, the risk is reduced. And therefore, people will invest in that portfolio at very low returns. So the natural progress of that property as an investment will be to eventually become part of a portfolio, either yours or somebody else's. And then that property be sold from one manager to the other until the profits are normalized, because it's part of a very big conglomerate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in that regard, here's where the confusion comes. You bought this property thinking low, like long term. I'm going to make my money on the long. So it's a short-term strategy, long-term strategy.
Right.
And eventually, for whatever reason, you get such good returns that you sell it. Then what was it? Was it a short or long term?
It depends on your definition of short and long.
No, you started it with a long term.
Right.
That's how you structured it. But it happens that you got such a good investment. The moment you sell it, it becomes a short term strategy. So you packaged it as a long term and you sold it to people that want it for long term. But the business and how you created value was by building or remodeling or whatever it is and selling. The moment you sell, that's when you create your value. Basically, and in the same example, you're taking that extra, if you were $1 million and you were getting 20% a year. So somebody will pay you that additional 10% of returns that you would have received for the next 4 or 5 years. Therefore, paying you your $1 million plus 20% times 5 years, that will be another $1 million. So you get 2 million. So you bought something for $1 million, you package it so well that you get it for 2, and then somebody else is going to get only 10% after that. And that's okay. So it's easier to explain if I have a piece of paper, but that's basically what's happening. You're taking this long income of month to month and monetizing it at net present value, and you're receiving that value today.
Right.
And therefore it became a short-term strategy. So the confusion in this is that people don't understand, yes, I'm buying this or I'm doing this and it's going to be a rental, but I'm not going to keep the rental. I'm going to find a fund. I'm going to find someone that is willing to split profits with me of future income so I can get the most out of my property. Because I need to create wealth today versus the people that are okay parking their wealth. This is a concept that a friend of mine taught me. It's very different when you are in wealth accumulation versus wealth preservation. If you're in wealth preservation, dude, just I don't want anything to move.
Yeah.
If you're in wealth accumulation, it's okay to package things as a long term, but you be very clear. Oh, I'm selling this thing. I don't want it. Anyway, perfect example is a big house we're building in a few blocks from here. The end price is going to be about 2.5, 2.7 million. Expected profits of 750 to $1 million. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh, are you going to live there? It's like, no, I'm going to sell the damn thing. For someone else, it'll be a great investment because the moment that you hand in the keys, that property will probably appreciate $500,000.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful. It's going to have a jacuzzi. It's going to have so many rooms, and it will go up in value. But for me, the way to make money is selling it. Not renting it, not using it as an Airbnb, not using it as a wedding venue. Those, all of them, long-term strategies. That's not my strategy. I need to make the money now.
So there is another long-term strategy, which is kind of referred to as like mineral rights or water rights or sewer rights, where typically you'll build a suburb and then you'll
timber rights
rights.
Yeah.
And you have a piece of land, you sell the timber on the land, you let the timber grow again, you sell it off again.
All long-term, yes.
Another long-term strategy. Or you have another strategy where you build a water tower, put water in the tower, you sell the water to the suburb that you've just built, you have a monopoly on water.
Correct. Not very common strategies, but yes, those exist. So you go talk to a county and you're going to create, those happen more in real estate development. You're going to put 250 homes and they don't have access to water. And instead of each house building their own well, you spend an extra $2 million for putting a water tower that will supply water to your whole complex. In the same way, you can create a sewer system that's self-contained. It's hard to do, but not impossible. And now you're servicing the 200 or 250 houses that you're going to be building, but you don't want to keep that new utility company, either sewer or water. You really want to give it to the county.
And the reason why you would want to give it to the county, if I'm not mistaken, is so then you can capitalize on the returns of that asset over several years all at once.
Same thing we were talking about. So a utility company by default is a long-term strategy. I don't care how you slice it. Are you into long-term strategies? Are you an operator? Do you really want to be having an engineer that go visit these things? It's like, I don't. I mean, could you do it? Yes. Is that the business you want to be in for the next 20 years? Maybe not. So if that's what it took to create the project, go ahead and do it. But chances are And if there's anybody hearing us from any given county and they want us to go develop any big piece of land in their county, it was like, oh, but I have a problem. I don't have water and I don't have sewer. No problem. What we want is if you go talk to the mayor and the mayor says, please bring more houses to our county. We need them. We have the jobs or we have the demand, but we don't have the resources. Of course, we have a way of getting it done. Not only that, but we will work with you. So at the end of our development, now the county will have a perpetual income that doesn't even need to be operated by them. A third party would operate it, but they manage the cash for it. But a county is in the business of long-term income, So yeah, that's perfectly doable. Then, and you had mentioned something when you put this stuff here. Instead of the difference between short-term rentals and long-term.
I'll ask the question.
Hold on. Yeah, so different strategies. Oh, so on long-term, yeah, I got it here. So on long-term, that's very easy to understand. It's rentals, and here it goes. Long-term, you have rentals, invest in land, buy and hold, build to rent, fix to rent, great, rent to own, done, sell rights of sewer water. This is a little bit more difficult. Most of the people, like in this particular example, they'd be like, what? Putting your utility company? That's like, you have to be 10 years into this to have even encountered one of those. So that's kind of complicated. And contract rights, absolutely. Now, on the short-term strategy, which is what people hear on the internet all the time, very simply, building a house, building a couple of houses, renovating, wholesaling. And for those who don't understand wholesaling, is you have the rights to do something into a property. You don't do it. You just sell it to the guy that will. Slice it, dice it anyway. That's wholesaling. So you actually made only paperwork, but no actual cutting trees or setting a foundation. Fix and flip, also a short term. We haven't talked about how to parcel a property. A lot of times, the easiest ways to extract value from a piece of land is to subdivide it into a few lots, sell the lots. Very good short-term strategy, very valuable. Grants, tax credits. I don't see that many tax credits being sold on a short-term strategy.
What was the strategy where, this is more of an advanced strategy,
Carbon.
where you move a river over on a piece of land and then you sell that as a credit to a builder? How does that work exactly? What is that?
So,
you mentioned it to me before.
Correct. That is called mitigation credits. And I'm going to explain it in as simple terms as I can.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a very large development of a given project, by the way, I'm not going to define big development. Just say, let's think biggest development you can think of on the city of Atlanta or in the city of Nashville. Think about a capital city. You're going to build a building, so many floors. And you had, even though you're close to downtown, you're going to mess up an underground river, a water basin, because you're doing foundation, something.
Mm-hmm.
So the state will require you to mitigate the damage that you're doing to the environment. And the way you do this is by purchasing from them, that's not them that they sell. The government doesn't sell them, but they have the control over who sells these mitigation credits. And they receive different names in different states. And what that is that somebody else went to a farmer in this piece of land that looks pretty, and they bought from the farmer their piece of land that has the creek, and then they made sure that that creek will not be contaminated, that it won't be lost to erosion. basically conserved, if you will. And they are granted X number of mitigation credits that then they put for sale with permission from the state government into whatever system you think of. This is I haven't seen it as a public auction. It's everything's done behind closed doors, and whoever's selling and whoever's buying, it's very difficult to find. But yes, this exists. I have a good friend of mine does this, and when he hears the podcast, he's like, "Oh, you said it all wrong, Pablo." Well, maybe one day we'll interview him, and then he won't want to say anything. But he's like, "Oh, I don't want anybody copy my idea."
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. A lot of people find it's very lucrative, but they find that it takes like 3 or 4 years before you get your first profit. Very difficult to find land that qualifies for those mitigation credits. And then very difficult to find those new projects that will monetize these credits by buying them from you. And I'll keep it at that. But often you and I have talked about how when people talk about this, oh, the carbon credits, it's like, who's going to buy them from you?
Right.
Oh, they just happen. No, they don't happen. Like, there has to be a buyer and a seller. And if you don't have a buyer and a seller, then it's just an idea. And the difference between these mitigation credits, which are true, and there's people making money on it, and this ethereal carbon credits is, it's a great idea, and many governments have proposed them, but while companies are not obligated to actually purchase them, and while there is no active market, then it is just a big PR stunt. But mitigation is not that. I've seen it work, and it's very profitable if you know how to do it.
So let me ask you this. What are the advantages of doing a short-term strategy in real estate?
Do you want to become a millionaire in the next 5 years or in the next 20? I'm asking.
In the next 5.
And there you go. So that's your answer. That's your answer. That's very simple.
But yeah, I guess the advantages of having a short-term strategy is that you can capitalize on the asset's potential earnings over a longer period of time within a short period of time.
Let's make a quick example that hopefully you can put it together into a tidbit. On a short term, let's say you buy a piece of land in an expensive part of town for $500,000 raw land, and you're able to put a house, new construction, for $750,000 to $1 million. Well, you're $1.5 million there in cost. But if you sell it for $2.5 million, well, you made $1 million on an investment of 1.5. It's a great return, because you will get permits in about 6 months to a year. You will build a house in another year. Your investment is $1.5 million, and you got $2.5 million. Beautiful, like great strategy. Mm-hmm. I don't care how you slice it. It's good business. Now, why isn't everybody else doing it? Well, it's hard to find that land. You need to keep your costs low. There's a lot of things that have to happen. Is that a short-term strategy? Absolutely. Are you going to make a lot of money? Absolutely. Do you require a lot of network, knowledge, time, and cash to make it happen? Yes. So that means that not a lot of people can access this. That's why you don't see it on the internet, in the internet or in Instagram. Nobody in Instagram tells you, go build rich people's houses. Do it now. Make $1 million in 2 years. Like, why? Of course not. It's too difficult. You need to share the knowledge of where's that piece of land. You need to share all your contacts of how to build it cheaply. You need to invest a lot of time with whoever you're trying to teach. It won't be easy teaching, even if they are glued to you for the whole 2 years. Doesn't mean they'll learn how to do it. And lastly, who's going to put the cash for the investment? Because
is it going to be your cash? Is it going to be
somebody else's cash? So going back to short term, like we have 5 of those deals going on right now. Like 5 houses that we'll build next year, in which each one, the minimum amount earned would be $500,000. Some of them will be about $1 million. Literally, we have these projects going on. If somebody would approach me and say, hey, teach me how to do that, I don't know where to start. Like, that's the problem. So what we see on the internet is, yes, get rich quick by doing this part-time, only a few hours a day. I really think that is just a great dream. Don't we all want that? But if somebody has a way of making $500,000 with very little amount of investment and very little amount of learning and very no network whatsoever and no knowledge, they'll be doing it themselves. Then why do they need you? They'll just hire a body for $50,000 a year and get their $500,000. So it's not what we want to hear, because what we want to hear is give me a way out, right? That's what we all want. I don't want to work forever. I want to make it. Well, you'll find your way. You just have to start doing deals, one after another. And you start with little deals, small wholesale, fix and flips. Don't fix and flip. Become a contractor. Do it on the side. Work for a contractor. You need to start getting knowledge of how things work. But if you don't even, if you've never been to a closing, you don't know what a difference between deed and title is. A lawyer has never duped you into signing the wrong thing, because it just happened to me today, by the way. I signed the wrong thing. Anyway, so if that never has happened to you, how do you think you're going to make it? No, you need to start small. And again, what I tell people, and I know we're right at 30 minutes, even after we take out the minutes from the flooding we had in our studio, is if you think you have a deal, bring it to us. And we will see how good a deal it is and what it is that you're missing to complete your deal. Are you missing time? I don't have time to do this, but I've got the money, I've got the network, and I got the knowledge. Pablo, maybe you can find somebody with the time, no problem. If you're saying, no, I'm willing to put on the time, Pablo, but I don't have the knowledge, but I have some cash to buy this deal. Do you have the network to make it happen? Sure. We'll trade you network and knowledge for your cash and your time. Depends on what the deal is. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't even think about the framework, short-term, long-term. If you have a deal, you don't know what to do with it, we'll figure it out. We'll spend our 20 minutes to an hour literally dissecting that thing, tell you what are the exit strategies for it on the short-term and the long-term, and we'll see if we can make it work. There's no other way. There's no other way. There's no artificial intelligence that you'll push a button and will tell you if this deal will work. In hindsight, it's very easy to say, oh my God, look at how much money these guys did. They bought it for X, they sold it for Y, and then somebody put apartments. So beautiful. Yeah, dude, but
the reality is that there's many obstacles, and it's not obvious what those obstacles are.
It's not obvious, correct.
And you can look at a spreadsheet all day, but until you've lived through it and you've seen it, it's very hard to identify what are the real deals and what are not. That's what you're saying.
I agree, and that's correct. So, Evan, thank you so much for interviewing him on my podcast. I really appreciate it. I know how hard this is for you, but I'll say this. This was a lot better than last time.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. Even with flooding in our studio.
Even with our flooding in our studio. We will remember that for some time.